Who are the people really being mentioned for president now on the short list?
Well, I think being mentioned more than any other is Joe Biden. Does he run or not? Is he too old or not? But, I'm a little more skeptical about Bernie Sanders, but I think Elizabeth Warren clearly seems to be out there likely to go. I think Kirsten Gillibrand and Kamala Harris are both...
they're top tier.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if they didn't run.
Look at these ages, by the way, Susan. Senator Sanders will be 79. Election day 2020, which is old even by Ronald Reagan standards. I mean, pretty old. Joe Biden, that November of 2020, he's 78. And even young spring chickens like John Kerry are 77. I mean, he's got Elizabeth Warren, not even in the running, she's 71.
I mean, one of the things that was so surprising about Donald Trump was at his age, he was able to be so active on the campaign trail. Everyone thought he would never be able to keep up the pace that he started out with. And he did. And actually, he never stopped.
He's peripatetic.
But what's also interesting about the people that you mentioned, and even some in the introduction, is that it's how used are they to running in the old setting versus in a Trump environment, social media, the attacks, the visceral. The folks that we've talked about for the most part so far are people who run traditional campaigns. Can they break out of the mold of this is how you do something in order to run against the Donald Trump?
Who do you think are the front runners?
Right. I would put Cory Booker, actually. I think he will be someone who will be...
Because he's going to run.
Because he's going to run, and I think he will be probably one of the most nimble people. We've seen him on social media. We've seen him how to adapt that way.
Go ahead.
Jason McAuliffe, Joe Biden. Those are the only real candidates that Democrats have if they're going to run against Donald Trump in 2020. This is a crucial election. We have seen what has happened in this country and how conversations and narratives have been transformed with him only being in office for 18 months. 2020 is not the year where the Democrats can run a woman and win. 2020 is not the year where Democrats can run a black person and win. They're going to have to run a white guy, and it's going to be a white guy who can connect with different
Who says?
I'm glad you said that. I did.
Because it's true.
Well, one of the biggest names among the potential Democratic field is former Vice President Joe Biden, who you can't ignore on this list. He was vice president. Here's what he said about possibly making a third run for the White House early this year.
I have plenty of time to consider whether or not to run for the president. We have really qualified people out there. My calculation has never been who's running, can I win, can I not win, is this right for me to do? And the only thing that's right for me to do now is to try to stop this enormous erosion of the moral fabric that's at the hands of Donald Trump and the Republicans.
You know, Heidi, he sounds like he wants to beat Trump.
You know, there is a scenario, despite his age, that party officials tell all of us reporters is not out of the impossible, and that is that you pair Joe Biden with a younger, maybe a minority candidate, maybe a Kamala Harris, and run the ticket with the expectation that maybe he only serves one term. And I think for Joe Biden, you see in him the fact that he continues to be not openly, but probably just privately haunted by the fact that he feels that if he had run in 2016, this, meaning Trump, may not have happened. He's Joe from Scranton, and all of those Midwestern working class voters who Hillary lost would be willing to give him a chance. And the one thing that has been in the past, when Susan talks about the differences between the past and the present, what was a potential liability for Joe Biden in the past, that he speaks off the cuff, that he commits gaffes, is now viewed as authenticity.
That's so well said. I want to ask you about, Reagan tried to do this with Schweiker back in whatever, 70, when the hell was that? 76. It didn't work, but it certainly boosted him at the end. Is that feasible for a candidate for president to say, all right, I'm running for president. I'd like to serve 2 terms, but maybe one. But my running date is going to be ready to take over if I don't run again. Her name's Kamala Harris. We're running as a team.
The thing is, I think that's the...
I love the idea.
I think that's the only way Biden can. So it works for him. I'm not sure I'd recommend to anybody else. But
would Kamala go along with that? Senator Harris go along with a deal like that.
It reminds me of the story about the one.
What about if she wants to be at the top of the ticket?
Well, but this is a better shot, a better
electable.
Being running mate to a guy that's in his upper 70s, that's not, you know, you're actuarially, your chances are pretty good that you're going to make it, that you're going to be
Aren't you the Grim Reaper?
But, no, but it's sort of like the old story about the woman who was asked by a friend, how's your husband? And she said, compared to what? And the thing is, if Democrats just nominate someone that's fairly innocuous, that's less polarizing, less controversial than A, President Trump, or B, Hillary Clinton, they will probably win that race based on Trump's numbers. But they could push the envelope and...
Let me just remind everybody, and I really like Joe Biden. He has a past. They're going to go after the plagiarism stuff. They're going to go after and Trump, he's already getting Pocahontas. He's going after, you know, Terry McAuliffe's going to be Hillary's bagman. Right. You know, he's got his nicknames all figured out, right? Jason, you enjoy this. You know how this contest works.
I know.
You're up against the most nasty bully in the world, in Trump.
There's a difference between being viable and being electable. Joe Biden can't win a primary. If he won a primary, he'd beat Trump. And the way he'd beat Trump...
You mean Trump wouldn't kill him on those issues?
Oh, not in the least. The same way he beat Paul Ryan. Because he'd look at Trump and say, look at this guy over here. You know this type. He's the guy who used to come back home to Scranton, pretend he was better than you because he went to college that his daddy paid for. I'm the real guy. Joe Biden would cream Donald Trump if they face each other in an actual election. I don't think he can get through a primary. And if he pulls this sort of Paul Newman, Tom Cruise thing where I got this young guy, he's going to be the next gambler to take over, I don't think that'll win. I don't think you can win a primary that way. That's the real challenge the Democrats are in. Their most effective guy against Donald Trump can't win a primary.
Well, what are you offering here?
Well, that's
You're right. Syracuse is going to beat Wharton.
Yes,
Penn. I get that, Susan.
Well, plus, if you think that you really have a chance at beating Donald Trump, that he is beatable in 2020, you're not going to wait for your turn. There is no more waiting for your turn.
So Kamala's not sitting in the second seat.
Absolutely, and I don't see why she would.
Well, here's the question, and I want to go back to this again. I only say to people when they say, who are the Democrats going to run this year? As if there's a group that meets and says who's going to run. Charlie, we know this. You don't pick the president. We don't pick the president. They pick themselves. As Mitch McConnell said, I have an entire caucus of class presidents. These guys, mostly guys, have been running for office since they hit college or high school. They've been running for class president, student body president. Clinton's just a typical one. They're all like that. They all are going to run for president. Amy Klobuchar's going to probably jump in this thing. They want it. You know, Kirsten Gillibrand doesn't need anybody else but Kirsten Gillibrand for her to run.
Well, and
that's how it works.
And now it's also the way you can raise money. You don't have to have such a big, massive support structure behind you. You can
The question
really
is,
make it
how
happen.
self-indulgent do Democrats want to be? Do they really want to beat President Trump, or do they want to do what feels good? And I think it comes down to that.
Which years do parties tend to go for the feel-good alternative? When they just give up and they can't beat the incumbent? Or when? Because, I mean, McGovern was feel-good. Goldwater was feel-good. It hasn't happened in a while.
You have to look at kind of 2012, where we had a bunch of clown car Republicans, I think, who ran because they didn't think they could beat Barack Obama. A lot of this will have to do with how 2012 looks. If Trump really looks weak, and this is the thing, this is why it may sound gloom and doom, but this is the most important thing to the Democrats, and it's not necessarily who runs. Yeah. What do they do about voting rights? What do they do about some of these bills and things? If they don't do something structurally about voting opportunities, it doesn't matter who they win.
Okay, let me tell you something about Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie's probably thinking, and Jeff Weaver, his guy, is thinking, you know, we may not win. Our guy may be too old. But if there's ever in history a chance for a person of the socialist background that this guy identifies with to win the presidential, it's running against a very, in many ways, awful opponent, Donald Trump, for a Democratic point of view.
His wife will be behind. His wife is a big component in pushing him forward towards it. She really wants him to run.
Well, as a long-rumored 2020 hopeful, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts certainly sounded like a candidate in her address at the Nevada Democratic Party convention last month. Let's listen to Senator Warren.
We're fighting for women, and that means electing more women, putting more women in positions of power, from committee rooms to boardrooms to that really nice oval-shaped room at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What do you think? Make no mistake, none of this is going to be easy. We will face obstacles together, and no matter what is thrown in our way, we will persist. So, I hope you're ready to fight uphill for as long as it takes, because I'm going up that hill and I need you with me all the way.
Wow. Heidi, I think we just heard the opening sound of Elizabeth Warren running for the Democratic nomination in the Iowa caucuses, where I think that message will be resounding. Your thoughts?
Maybe. Maybe not. Sounds a lot like she did in 2016 when, Chris, you and I sat on the set and speculated, had the same speculation. I think it comes down to is it's either Bernie or Elizabeth Warren, not both. I think if Bernie runs, I don't think she'll run. I think she'll be someone who goes out and fires up crowds. She loves to give those stump speeches, but it is a little kept secret that she doesn't actually enjoy a lot of the other semantics of campaigning. She doesn't love the push and pull with the media, and I just don't think that she'll do it if Bernie Sanders runs.
Well, then who decides? Does Bernie jump in the day after these elections in November? He gets the head start on her? Is that how it works? And then she's out of the action, or does she jump in first?
Chris, Bernie's doing nothing to tamp down speculation. As a matter of fact, he's making a lot of trips to key states. He had his guy Jeff Weaver in on the DNC meetings, trying to make sure that whatever rule changes are made are equitable, and that he puts his stamp on them. And most importantly, he's trying to move a little bit beyond his pet issues, right? So one of the criticisms of Bernie in 2016 was that he had the same message, was just, beating up on the billionaires and the millionaires.
Well, he's had the same message since 1945, probably. But the question is, I think I disagree with you. I think if Bernie, with his tremendously zealous following, he can jump into this election so late in the game, and they'll be there waiting for him.
I think Elizabeth Warren will eat his lunch.
You think so?
She's the real deal, and with an age that makes more sense. I would watch.
Well, here we go. Elizabeth Warren, the youngster, against the other guy. They're all in their 70s. We'll be coming back in a moment. Plus, coming up, some Democrats long for a wild card pick to upend politics the way Trump did back in 2016. The fantasy roster coming up. It includes Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, and a lot of people with more likely to run. Some of these big shots from out of politics may move right in. Plus, the biggest question the Democrats face in 2020, how do you run against President Trump when it comes to him and you? Meanwhile, Trump has already begun testing his re-election message. On the one hand, there's the scorched earth attack against Democrats. On the other, hyping his own achievements in office with a message that often strains, credulity. And it's more than a whisper campaign. A number of Republicans and prominent conservatives argue the only way to save the party is to challenge Trump.